Good morning. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy. Welcome to LoveBabz, LoveTalk. This is the second hour where I'm talking to people that I enjoy, particularly Alistair Neal from the New Haven Symphony Orchestra, who I am so delighted to have back because the symphony opening season happens Sunday, 3 o'clock at the Schubert, which, oh, so much to unpack here. And Stefan Falair is a fellow of some sort. Who is joining us this morning. And so I want to hear about his musical life. But first, let me talk to Alistair. Hey, Alistair, how are you?
I'm very, very well, Babz. How are you? So good to see you. We had a great chance to hang out together at the International Festival of Arts and Ideas over the summer and on a nice warm summer evening, as I remember. That's the last time I saw you. It's good to see you.
Yes, it is nice to see you. It is nice to see you. And so when I got the press release, it said, oh, the board has unanimously extended its contract to you, and then blah 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 blah, and then after that, my husband and I are moving to Paris. Yeah. we rearranged our lives, and we're gonna go do something else. And I want to talk a little bit about that before we talk about the symphony, because you and I both have had these kinds of conversations with other people in our lives about what this pandemic has given us as, I guess, gifts of some sort about how to organize and rearrange our lives to live it, as Oprah would say, to live your best life possible.
It's all about Oprah, really, at the end of the day, isn't it?
I think so.
And that's what you said is a really interesting way of looking at it as counterintuitive as it seems, that maybe there is a gift in this, and that is that it has forced all of us to hit pause, whether we like it or not, and given us an enforced moment of introspection. Like as if we have the chance to say, so what do we really want? It turns out life is even shorter potentially than any of us had imagined, and it's short enough as it is. What can we do to live our best life? To get the most that we can out of it in the time that we have. And that's really what prompted the discussion between my husband and myself in the wake of his upcoming retirement. What do we want? And for me, in no small part, one of the things that I realized was that when this all starts to happen, this transition to Paris, it'll have been 40 years that I've made my life and my work in this country, which is to say my entire adult life. And it's been just unbelievable in so many ways. We could have an entire show for me to say the ways in which I've been inspired and rewarded in our country. But at the same time, it's 40 years, my entire adult life, that I've been away from my family in the UK. And this is a really important part of it for me. I want to be able to just spend a little bit more time closer to them. And then, as I was talking to somebody yesterday who explaining to it, and they cut me off at the beginning, they said, "Hey, Paris, no need to explain anything further."
Oh, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's my favorite city. You know, I love Paris.
Me too.
Love it. So yeah, I too have been thinking about what to do with the rest of my life in meaningful ways, because I'm aging and I don't have 58 more years in front of me. So, you know what I mean? So when you start to think about that, you're like, what do I really want to be doing with my time and that kind of thing?
It's when you realize that you've seen more sunsets than you will see, that there's a little bit of a game changer there. Like no matter how optimistic you are, you are on the back nine.
Yes.
And the distance between 1 year and the next gets distressingly shorter with each passing year. I don't know how that happens, but it does.
It does. So yes. So even though I love having you here in this city, I am more for you living your best possible life.
Well, that's kind of you, and everybody's been very understanding in that same vein. And but I also should point out that I have 3 more seasons. This is the beginning of the last season. So
it's like you're not leaving tomorrow. You got.
Yeah, no, that's not the way I wanted to do it. It wouldn't have been the right thing to do for the organization. This way, that not only do we have 3 more seasons together, but the board will have a good amount of time to consider what their next move is going to be and who my successor is going to be, and that would have, if it had been any other way, I would have not felt comfortable in making that decision unless it was a fair one for the organization.
And so, Stephan, you're the fellow. What fellow are you?
Many types of fellow: Florida fellow, violin fellow, conducting fellow. But I'm officially the very first inaugural conducting fellow.
Whoa!
Yes. It's so I don't want to say a trailblazer, but I'm in unprecedented territory when it comes to the organization. So sort of carte blanche. I won't be pushing Alistair off the podium anytime soon. But I actually joined. I got my email and letter saying I had been accepted March 2020. So you can imagine what was going on March 2020.
Yes, the beginning of the.
Yes, it was literally maybe days later that things shut down in the city. I'm in Queens right now. And so I met basically everybody digitally, and we connected so well doing a few things. I'm sure you know Chelsea. So Chelsea, Alistair, and I all did this program called the Listening Club for certain people, and we talked about various topics. But it kept coming back to us that, wow, we've never actually met in person. And Alistair, I only met earlier this summer for the very first time, and Elaine as well. And we all sort of had these ideas of, well, don't tell us how tall you are. They kept telling me, don't tell me how tall you are. So I either want to be surprised or I'll be, oh, that's how tall I thought you were going to be. But it was a no-brainer to apply to this fellowship. I met Chelsea Tipton at a festival in Nashville, and he just talked lovingly of the organization and originally tried to get me as a violinist. As I said, I'm various fellows, not a fellow with the organization as a violinist, but I'm also a professional violinist. And I said, I'm actually more a conductor, or trying to be more of a conductor. We talk about, reevaluating what we want to do during the pandemic. My dream has always been to conduct, but it was really one of those things where if I just sort of wait for the opportunities to come, I'm going to miss more than if I were to just sort of reach out and try and create something for myself. Still the chance for nothing to happen, but you can go to sleep at night knowing you tried every avenue you could to create an opportunity. And this is going to be my first classics concert with the organization. I was fortunate. Oh, absolutely. So I'm the biggest newbie, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. We're in Schubert Theater, which I absolutely love and adore. I'd never been there before, but I love looking at old theaters, and I'm a big sucker for historical venues.
And this one is a historical one.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can catch old movies with it in it, right? So it's got a long, storied history.
Absolutely. And I bring that up because, it's not, to me, it's going to be strange because that's how I'll know the symphony first. But talking to the orchestra, the organization, compared to where they normally perform, which is Woolsey Hall, which I was fortunate enough to walk in on a tour and just sort of be taken aback by the grandiose of that space.
Yeah, that place is impressive. Like,
yes. It's not just like walking into a closet. It's like walking in and suddenly you want to breathe quieter or something like that,
Yes. So, all right. So this is the opening season, and Alistair, you've had this pandemic in the way of things. Tell me about the collab between you and the Schubert Theater. Like, how did this happen? Because I saw some PSA, some commercials. I guess this is happening around Connecticut, where I think they're doing something like this similar in Hartford with their symphony and their theater. And so tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Woolsey Hall is not available to us at this current time.
Oh, really?
Yep. So we are eagerly collaborating with the Schubert theater. I'm excited for the change that it brings. I will say it's a wonderful challenge for the orchestra because acoustics are absolutely, as I'm sure you know, the kind of space that an orchestra plays in is absolutely key to the way that we sound. And different spaces produce different kinds of sounds. Anybody that's been in Wolsey Hall knows that it is a very echoey place. And it's hard to, it's a very warm sound, but it's a very diffuse sound. So it feels like you're in a bathtub. The Schubert is the exact opposite. Of course, it's a lot smaller. I think it's 1,600 as opposed to 2,900, something like that in Wolsey. And it's a lot drier, so there's no echo at all. And that means we have to play in a radically different way than we do in Wolsey. In the way that the length that we play of the notes and the kind of it's like an actor with diction, the kind of consonants that we would use to project in Wolsey are very different than what we have to do in the Schubert theater. So it's been the rehearsals so far this week have been they've been really, really good. And above all, of course, it's tremendously exciting and wonderful to see everybody on stage again.
Oh, good.
Missed each other. It's 18 months, which have been really hard for so many of my colleagues. And I've missed them tremendously. And so just the fact that we're back together as a musical family has been a real source of joy this week.
So tell me about the program. Tell me about opening, because I see Florence Price is in there.
Yes, you do.
I was like, if Alistair doesn't love a black woman composer, I don't know who does.
Well, not just Florence Price, but also Valerie Coleman, whose music opens this season as well.
Wow.
So the program, of course, had a long time to come together because we didn't know until a certain stage what kind of concert we might be able to put on, where we were going to put on, what the dates might be. Like every other organization, we've had to sort of revise our timeline of how things happen. So I had a good amount of time to figure out what this opening concert would look like. And it was important to me to think, what do we want to say in our first concert that we're doing as an orchestra publicly in 18 months? What does it say about us as an organization? So what it is actually is a journey from what will almost certainly be unfamiliar, Valerie Coleman's fanfare for Uncommon Times. And I say unfamiliar because it was only premiered in August at the Caramore Festival in New York. This, I believe, will be the New England premiere, so I'm pretty confident that nobody in the audience will have heard that before. And then we'll follow it with Florence Price's Ethiopia's Shadow in America, which is a wonderful 13-minute long piece. And I thought that it would be a lovely way of taking up the thread that of the last concert that we did in public, which was March 5th, 2020, that I'm sure you remember featured Florence Price's Symphony No. 1. And that was the last concert we did. So I thought, why not the first concert that we do back have another of her pieces? And so that will come after Valerie's piece. And then the Stravinsky Violin Concerto with Ty Murray, who is...
I am so excited about that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm beside myself excited about her.
And we had our first rehearsal there last night, and we had such a good time. It was great, and she's such a wonderful player, and really gets this Stravinsky concerto with all of its kind of ebullience and rhythmic fun and interplay with the orchestra. It's really great to work with her. So that's a little bit more standard repertory. So we're going from through the Florence Price piece is still not yet part of the canon. But I think a lot more people are doing this particular piece, I'm glad to say. Then the Stravinsky, which is one of the central works of the violin repertoire for the 20th century. And then after intermission, probably the most familiar symphony of all, Beethoven's Fifth. And a journey from darkness to light. And while we're not technically really fully in the light yet, I would say, we're getting there. So I thought that it was at least emotionally would have some sort of resonance with people.
Well, we got to be hopeful.
And that's what the Beethoven expresses.
We have to be able. So, Stefan, so what do you get to do in all of this? Like, have you been going to rehearsals? Have you been like?
I've been chomping at the bits because it's my first, as I told Alistair and I told the organization, it's the first time in just as long, 18 months, that I've been seen in the capacity as a conductor or conductor fellow, and not as someone playing in the band, playing in the violin section. So the role of a conducting fellow, as we're interpreting it, because no two fellowships are the same, and being the first one and having no predecessor, I can sort of, like I said, write any ideas, and if it sticks, great. But yes, the basics, I like to think a hybrid assistant conductor. So I have to learn the scores. I go over the scores with Alistair, which is just, it's like free lessons. I mean, he's just got a life, memories, and just expertise. And I told him the first meeting, he's like, I'm bad at asking questions. So if you just want to tell me anything you find interesting about what we're doing, I want to hear it. Like if there's a page I turn and you're like, well, you didn't ask about this, just say it to me, because I'm just a sponge. I feel like a student again, just a sponge. So preparing the scores and studying them with Alistair, I can work as a second set of ears in the audience. I can move around to help with balances. But really, at the simplest, I'm there in case something were to happen and Alistair was not able to do something. I can fill in that perspective. And then it's really just learning, how does one become a music director? How does one music direct? Because it's such a difference from being a freelance conductor, being a student conductor. It's really, a different art form. And it's something that they really don't teach at all in graduate school. They will teach you how to 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, cue the flute, cue the bass, take a bow, and walk off stage. But how to audition to be a music director, how to come up with programs. He's just explained the whole concept of this concert. And they sprinkle a little bit of that in grad school, but it takes much more thought than just, we need to do an overture, a concerto, and a symphony. You can do it that way, but then you'll have an audience that is not as receptive to coming back again. What I really love is, obviously wasn't a part of the organization, but the Florence Prize Symphony No. 1 and doing Florence Prize again creates this thread, like Alistair said. So a season is connected to another season. It's not this disjointedness. It's like any life, but that's essentially what I'm doing. And then the hope is, once schools, like Alice just said, we're still sort of in this pandemic and we just got the go ahead for the concert, but I'll be doing some education outreach, going into the schools, working with anyone that, will have me. But it's really about learning all the things behind the scenes to be a professional musician.
So, Alistair, tell me a little bit about how are the musicians feeling? Like when they first gathered for first rehearsal, what was the mood?
It was like a family getting back together again. And as far as I could tell, because basically we're looking at people's eyes,
yes,
right? because we're having to be masked inside. So every now and again, I will just, when we get to the end of a passage that I've rehearsed and something went well, I'll just sort of pull my mask down and just smile, because I just can't not do that, to show that I was like, okay, here's my happy face underneath the mask. So yeah, there was definitely a sense of relief and happiness about seeing each other again. It's the longest time, I'm quite certain, in all of our collective careers that we've gone 18 months without playing a full orchestra concert.
Wow.
And that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a painfully long time.
It really is.
So how did it feel to be conducting? Like, Alistair, how did it feel to be back up in front of them and be like, here I am, let's go?
It felt great. I had a sort of a preview of that with the summer festival that I do in Sun Valley, Idaho, where we were back to normal there. So I was conducting a whole bunch of concerts in August of just a couple of months ago. But I haven't conducted since then, so I have to tell you, on Wednesday morning, I felt a little bit creaky, because you use a lot of muscles, and it's like any kind of athlete. If you go a while without using those muscles, and then suddenly use them again, you feel it the next day. Or maybe it's just because I'm getting older. It was probably both.
I think both. But I mean, I think there is something to that. So all right. So would you say that what the opening night, it's not terribly ambitious. It's designed to make us feel like there's hope in the air, that it's comforting. Like what did you want us to see and understand about this particular body of music?
Well, as I said earlier, it's a journey toward more familiar from the less familiar, and a mixture of old and new, and familiar and unfamiliar. And I chose Beethoven 5 because it has this. The theme of anything is resilience in the face of challenge. The first movement is that famous da 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 ba ba ba. The four most famous notes in all of classical music, and what an amazing thing to do with just literally 4 notes. But it's fate knocking at the door, whatever allegory you want to think about it. But it's definitely the kind of stuff that's made of strife, and then the journey through the symphony ultimately ends in triumph. But even then, that last movement, which is this just sort of joyous exaltation kind of thing, 2/3 of the way through that, it kind of grinds to a halt, and we're plunged back into one of the earlier movements, which is recalled, and it's much more ghostly and threatening, and it's as if the celebration has been interrupted by the realization that, just underneath the surface, there's always going to be sort of goblins underneath, and so we have to remember that even in the face of happiness, that we have to keep our guard up in a certain way. Can't imagine what that has to do with anything these days.
So Stephan, what will this fellowship do for you? What do you hope that it'll do for you? And if it's successful, however way y'all measure success, does this open a door for other fellows behind you? Like, is this a trial? Is this a thing that they want to institutionalize to be a part of this music experience? So what happens, and what do you want?
I definitely believe, and I think I can speak for the organization, this is not going to be a trial. This is something that they believe at the core is something that's needed. That something is more representation for underrepresented musicians, and not only musicians, but also administrators. There are fellowships around the country that, I don't want to use the word cater, but are for people of color, people that are, again, underrepresented. Where those fellowships are in the organization are not always the same. It's very rare for them to be of the administrative level. So I'm talking about things that interested me in coming to New Haven. Rare at the administrative level, usually in the orchestra, woodwinds, string players, also rare to have it on the podium. And it's this idea that while it's great to walk into an organization, see brown faces, see tan faces, maybe see someone walk out that has a face or skin tone that matches yours, to then see maybe a picture of the board and see a board made up, again, of brown faces, tan faces, of mostly women, that is a big changer and really affects the mood of who comes to concerts. For me, this will give me the tools and the insight to better take my career to the next level. And success is so hard, because is it just conducting a concert? Okay, that's easy to do. But the career of conducting is something that Alistair can do it in maybe 5 steps, and it'll take me 10 steps, but I might get to the same level that he is at. But there's no rubric. There's no, if you do this, that will happen. So it's both very frightening, but exhilarating in that sense, because again, I can sort of just give them any idea. Oh, I want to try this. Saturday morning, I have a coffee talk with some of the patrons of the Symphony Orchestra. as the fellow. I would have never thought as a conducting fellow I'd be giving, a coffee talk to people about the upcoming concert. But the success of the fellowship doesn't really ride entirely on me. I could fail as a fellow, which I don't expect to happen, and I still would imagine they bring in another fellow. But it's really, New Haven is probably the only orchestra in the New England area that I think is really taking a look at system of Western classical music and saying we could do better, and we will do better, and we are doing better. I mean, just looking at this first program, that we have 3 women of color on the program, Valerie Coleman, Price, and Ty Murray, and that we have a piece that I keep saying to everybody, you couldn't get a more new piece than if Valerie had written it last week. And this is a living, breathing piece. And it is still evolving and maturing and finding its strengths. And that is a rarity in Western classical music, because we can sort of get bogged down with doing the hits. Just like pop music. Why are we going to this concert? I don't want the B-side of the album. Give me, the hits of the album. But there's something that affects the journey. And so going to see a new piece where the composer is still alive, still quite healthy, not on a deathbed or anything, but really in the throes, the full surge of her career, and have a premiere, and then hear another work that is becoming into the canon, and sort of, I don't want to reiterate what Alistair said, but come from the unknown into the known. And then I think when those last chords sound in Beethoven 5, it will really feel as if, okay, we're back. We might not be back the way we want to be back, but we're back together. We're looking forward positively. I know that's a roundabout way. I asked so many things.
No. I think this is perfect, because I think you brought up a lot of things. So, I mean, Alistair, do you get the sense that times are changing for Western classical music? I mean, just by this particular repertoire that you're putting on, I mean, you got, like he just said, 3 women of color,
Unquestionably. And it's one of the reasons that Valerie's fanfare was originally going to be on the program that we're going to do in September on the Green, that we had to postpone because of COVID concerns. But again, it was a last minute thing. I read a review of it in the New York Times, and I thought, well, this piece sounds fascinating. And it's just so tailor-made. Because one of the, I mean, it refers, fanfare for uncommon times is an allusion, an oblique allusion to the Copland fanfare for the common man. And it's scored for the same forces, brass and percussion, but it sounds very different. And one of the underlying themes of it in its 6 minutes is one of contemporary issues of social justice. And this, you can see why I would taking one look at this piece, and I'm thinking you couldn't ask for a more important and relevant piece for our times and what we are about as an organization, and that is an organization that's involved in a transformative experience. And it's my privilege and responsibility to be part of carrying out this mission, which is essentially redefining what a symphony orchestra should mean to its community.
Wow. I think that's pretty powerful, because I don't ever think anybody would have ever thought social justice and classical music on the same, I just, and here it is on the same street, and presented to a very diverse and wide audience, who will be experiencing something they never heard, along with stuff that they already know. So I think that's amazing. So are y'all both ready for opening night? Because, it's a big deal. It's exciting and glamorous. A little bit of glamour, I think.
Yeah, COVID style, I guess. We're all presumably the most stylish, chic face masks in town.
Yes. So I love the fact that it's such a Schubert. I'm very interested in hearing how it will sound, because I've gone to the Schubert just like a lot of people, but I've never seen a full-on orchestra play there, so this will be the first time. So, so do you like the space, Alistair? Like, does it feel like, okay, this is not different, but yeah, I like this.
Yeah. Well, it has just looking out of the house. It has such character, you know. It's just this. It's really beautiful. I love that style of from a certain era. I'm guessing is it, or I should know
earlier, maybe earlier.
Maybe earlier, but anyway, it has a lovely charm to it, and. Stefan knows the hall better than I do because he's been sitting. He's one of the things he mentioned earlier that I'm so grateful to have him as my colleague here is that he is my ears in the house. And so he can sit from the audience's vantage point, which is what it's all about. It's not really how it sounds to us on stage, it's the people for whom we're playing. And sometimes what I hear on the podium isn't exactly the same as what the audience would hear in the house. So Stefan has been tremendously helpful in telling me, okay, this here sounds a little bit too much, or a little bit, that's what he was referring to earlier with talking about balances, how each section of the orchestra is balanced against one another. And since he studied the scores and knows what the composer's intent is, and he and I have talked about it a little bit behind the scenes, he knows pretty much what I'm looking for. And it's I'm so grateful for his eagle ears, that's not the word, eagle eyes, whatever the equivalent is for ears, in the audience to give me some really important feedback. So thank you, Stefan.
Anytime.
Well, I thank you all so much for coming on today, because I know you have to get back to rehearsals, and I know you've got a lot to do before Sunday. But so I appreciate meeting you, Stefan. And it's always a pleasure to see you, Alistair. So I will be in the audience. I can't wait to hear these pieces. I'm such a fan of y'all. So I thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Babz. Great to see you always.
All right. So enjoy. Break a leg. What did I say in the classical world? Is it break a leg?
Break a leg, does it? Sometimes we say toy toy.
Toy toy, break a leg. Go get them. High five.
All of that.
Thank you all so much. Have a good weekend. I'll see y'all Sunday.
See you then.
Thank you. All right, Harry. We are ready. It's Friday, and we're about to jump on out. And if y'all haven't gotten your tickets for the symphony, y'all better go get it, because you don't want to miss this. It's an opportunity to experience. If you feel like Woolsey Hall might be a little intimidating, Schubert's just down the street, so come check it out. I'll be in the house, and it'll be some other good people in the house. So come and good music right in our. All right, Harry. Thank you so much. Play us out. I'll see y'all on Monday.
Rawls-Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.